Hello and welcome to Bharat I'm Brigadier Chatterjee. We're going to be again talking about a neighborhood country in our neighborhood focus series. But this time the format is a little different. We'll not talk about the country as a whole, but we'll just talk about the borders. And this is the Indo-Myanmar border that I'm talking about. At one stage, there was a freeze along this border, and thereafter there was free movement. And now again, we're going to perhaps a freeze. That's what is being talked about these days. To take us through the whole story, I have with me Lieutenant General Shakti Chauhan, who's been the DG Assam Rifles and after retirement also the chairman of the ceasefire monitoring group. Welcome to the show, General.
Thank you, Brigadier Chatterjee. Kind of you to invite me on a very vexed subject, the Indo-Myanmar boundary border and the various attempts that we have made over the years to try and solve it. Whether we have been able to solve it or not is a very different process. But we've been going up and down from 1968 onwards to try and sort out this issue. So thank you for inviting me.
General, I think the first issue that I want to discuss with you is that if you could explain the layout of this border, I think a lot flows from there. The India-Myanmar border. How does it? How is it on the ground really?
See, it's the northeastern part of our country, absolute northeastern part. So the border runs along 4 states of our country. I'll go from the north. The northernmost state is the northeasternmost state is Arunachal Pradesh, and it comes on the western boundary or the eastern boundary of Arunachal Pradesh. Right at the end is a tri-junction between India, Tibet, and Myanmar. And since Tibet has been annexed by China, we are now in a position where for 66 kilometers of this boundary, we have not been able to, come to a solution. And therefore, Myanmar has left this part without agreeing to demarcate this part. Myanmar has demarcated the balance 1,643 kilometers. So the northernmost state is Arunachal. From there southward, you come to Nagaland. From Nagaland, you come southward to Manipur, and further southward, you come to the state of Mizoram. And this is how the boundary divides the 2 countries. Now, where is the problem? Why are we facing a problem like this? You would probably say that, as many in the Home Ministry would tell me, that this is not a live border. There is no boundary dispute. Why are you always in a problem? The issue is that if you go from the south, Mizoram, as you know, are Mizos. Mizo is the dominant community in Mizoram, and also the political community in Mizoram. Now, Mizoram basically are Chins. The Mizos are Chins, as are the Kukis in both Mizoram as well as Meitei in Manipur. We call them Kukis. Both Kukis and Mizos are Chins. And the state that borders them, that the Myanmar state that borders Mizoram and Manipur, is the Chin state. So really the line divides the Chin state to India, that is both on Manipur as well as Mizoram. And northward, when you go upwards from Manipur, you are dividing the Nagas. And the community that you're dividing are the Konyak Nagas. And the Konyak Nagas for years have been fighting an insurgency with us through an insurgent group called the NSCN-K, that is Khaplang group. But basically their issue has been the division of their homeland. And finally, you come to the northernmost state, that's Arunachal, where you have an immense amount of people who have been divided on both sides. So this line, which was divided in 1937, when Britain decided to demarcate the country of Burma from the colonial country of part of India. This was the boundary that they had sort of used, and that divided a lot of communities. And because these communities were divided, you had to create you had to allow them to move unhindered. And therefore, 1967, as you know, Brigadier Chatterjee, you had an agreement with Myanmar or Burma about creating what you called a 16-kilometer free move regime, which basically meant that people living on between 16 kilometers of either side of this fence, of this border, would be allowed free access to each other because they were part of the same community. And they could also carry headloads, only headloads, as per their ancient traditions of trading between themselves. Now, I have physically gone on this border in both Mizoram and Nagaland and Manipur, as well as the border in Arunachal. In each one of these places, there's a different issue. And that is the issue that we must talk about as we go about further.
All right, I got perhaps what you said is that while making the dividing line, we did not bother much about the social, the demographic factors. It was more a geographical line. But as it stands today, can you just elucidate a little bit more about what are the challenges across this border? Well, I'm quite aware of these challenges of gun running and human trafficking, things like that. But what are the challenges in terms of insurgent groups on the other side trying to come this side or this side who have bases on the other side? If you could just throw some light on that.
So, Brigadier Chatterjee, actually, you have to talk of the human angle first, because that is what is going to be the defining factor in the success of this proposed fence. The human angle is that you are dividing the Chin community in Mizoram, you are dividing the Naga community in Nagaland, various different tribes of Nagaland, you are dividing the Kuki community in Manipur on both sides, and the Naga community again in Arunachal. Now, I have spoken to the Chief Minister of Mizoram when I was the Director General Assam Rifles, and he told me, General, he was Mr. Lalthan Howla, and he told me, General, the Kukis are what we are. I mean, the Chins are what we are. Our historical life, our religious forests, our religious stones, all lie that side of, on the other side in Myanmar. There is no question that we will stop going to our historical religious lands, because that is sacred for us. It's a sacred forest. And the Chief Minister of Mizoram has come out clearly and said that he is not in favor of creating this fence, because that will divide his community, which they will not permit. Similarly, another aside, I later was the chairman of the ceasefire monitoring group. And if you remember, the NSC and Kaplan group had broken the ceasefire in 2015, ambushed the 15 Dogra, and killed almost 18 of our soldiers. So when we were trying to get them back in 2019, Kaplan had died, the old man had died, and it was now being led by General by General Koniat Khango. So when I was talking to Khango and I said, General Khango, why are you continuing with this war? And he said, I will continue this till my community is unified again. So this line again divides the Koniak community. It divides the Chang community. It divides these various other tribes of Nagaland. Because on the other side, and there are many villages in Nagaland and in Myanmar, through which the line runs through. And in fact, a couple of houses are in our side and a couple of houses on the other side. So it's going to be very difficult for us, Brigadier Chatterjee, to try and make a fence which divides communities, which divides homes, which divides villages. The second part of this complicated fence is the issue of terrain. It's an extremely harsh terrain. There are mountains, there are rivers, there are jungles. There is no communication, roads made. And because there are no roads, there are no tracks, it's going to be difficult carrying the fence material to try and create this fencing. And thirdly, if the communities don't accept this fence, then we would have to put in an inordinately large number of people to guard this fence because the communities will break it up. Fourthly, the complication of this border, as I said, though there is no dispute between India and Burma or India and Myanmar on the border, the issue is that there are almost 55 insurgent camps that are located about 20 to 40 kilometers away from the Indian border in Myanmar. And these insurgents, due to the lack of any kind of ability to stop them, come through, operate in India and go back. And they are actually responsible for both the illegal smuggling, illegal narcotics, illegal arms, illegal weapons, illegal wildlife products, and a whole lot of illegal issues that these certain insurgent groups carry out. Now, like I said, if you add all this together, you add the terrain, you add the weather, you add the lack of communication, you add the communities that you're going to divide, you're going to have a very difficult time building this fence. As you're aware, in 2004, we started building this fence. We started from a place called More, which is the last town in Manipur before we enter the town of Tamu on the other side. We could build it only for about 1.5 kilometers before the locals stopped the fence. So at the moment, though we've made up our mind to build this fence, I would feel that realistically, it's going to be a very difficult proposition.
But you see, we have a fence along the Indo-Pakistan border, and we have a fence, Indo-Bangla border also, we have a fence. Now, don't you think that over a period of time, it could really settle down along the Indo-Myanmar border also?
See, while I agree that we have been successful to some extent along the Indo-Pakistan border and the Indo-Bangladesh border, here the communities that have been divided are communities that have historically been running an insurgency against us. And one of the issues of this insurgency was the unification of Nagas, the unification of their tribes. Mizoram, we brought to peace and away from insurgency only because we agreed to accept a Mizo government there. Completely Mizo government. The Mizos, even today, are giving refuge to almost 50,000 Chin refugees who have come in because of this internal problem in Mizoram. And like I said, we've been speaking to the Mizos, to their political heads and to everybody, and they all say that these are their kith and kin, and they will not be divided. So when you are talking of the local people not accepting this fence, it's going to be extremely difficult to build it.
Right, General. If you could give us the details of the free movement regime and what really gets stalled now. You've already explained it a little bit before, but if a few more details would perhaps make it a little more.
So, like I said, when this fence started dividing communities, India and Myanmar or Burma in 1967 got together to sign an agreement with regard to what we called it a free move regime. And this free move regime basically meant that villages that were between 16 kilometers off the international boundary were allowed to trade and to move freely between their own villages between these 16 kilometers. They trade with headloads, only headloads. This meant willy-nilly an issue about unsupervised border, which was taken advantage of by the insurgent groups that by then had started this insurgency. So when they started this insurgency and would use this free move regime and also use the lack of troops in and along the Indo-Myanmar border, it created a law and order situation for us as well as a great insurgency situation for us. And as you're aware, because you're also you've also fought the counterinsurgency battles in the Northeast, is that we have been fighting this insurgency since 1956. It's the longest running insurgency. And because this insurgency is something that has not ended, a very large amount of our troops are actually involved in fighting this insurgency. And as a result, the troops which should have been doing border guarding have been actually pulled in to fight this insurgency in our hinterland, because our police forces have largely proved, the state police forces have largely proved ineffective in this area. Our police forces have no survivability at all. No police station can exist along the Indo-Myanmar border on its own independently. It can't take care of itself. The reason is that on the other side of in the Myanmar border, you have almost 55 to 60 insurgent camps, which are between 20 and 40 kilometers away from the international boundary, which are away from 1 day's distance, that Indian army can't go in and strike them because that's another sovereign country. And let's talk about the issue that I actually had brought up with the government of Myanmar when I had gone to Naypyidaw in 2017, was the issue about policing this border. For 1,643 kilometers, the government of Myanmar has only 4 units, 4 infantry units for 1,643 kilometers. That means each unit has to look at something like 400 kilometers, which is an impossibility. It's not possible. So what they've done is, and now that they're involved in this impossible war that they're fighting within their own country, whatever these 1,600 troops were or 4 units were, they too have been pulled in. So they have actually moved out most of their forces from this and given the supervisory rights to these insurgent groups. And they've allowed them to literally govern this area and not create problem for the government of Myanmar. So this is the quid pro quo that they have with the insurgent group. That, look, you run this area, we are not going to be bothered. Don't let anyone create a problem for us. And that creates a problem for us, because we have less units on the Indo-Myanmar border. We have not raised more Assam rifle units. Most of the Assam rifle units are fighting a counter-insurgency battle inside our own Northeast, the states of the Northeast. And you have an unsupervised border because Myanmar army has not placed any troops. So this is the confusion. This is the issue that most people don't realize, that it's bad terrain. There are no roads. There are jungles. There are mountains. There are rivers. Almost impossible to supervise. And on top of that, if you were to build a fence, to my mind, unless you placed more than 2 lakh people on this fence, it would be impossible for us to supervise this.
Right, General. I understand it's very difficult to really supervise along the fence, especially in the kind of terrain that you've already explained.
Terrain, weather, everything adds up,
right,
creating a problem for us.
Right, but you see that we haven't been able to either control the insurgencies also on our side, and it's been aided because of these factors like we're having a free border across which you come across. So do you think there are no gains at all after all the issues being pursued rather, I would say, loudly by the central government?
Maybe Chatterjee, every once in a while, when one particular state, like now the state of Manipur has this problem between the Nagas, the Meiteis and the Kukis. And since Kukis have a large population in the state opposite, that is the Chin state, every once in a while you have this resolve to create some kind of barrier along the Indo-Myanmar border. But this barrier has to help the people. If the local population does not accept this barrier, it would be impossible for us to supervise it. Nowhere along the Indo-Pakistan border, along the line of control, or along the Indo-Bangladesh border, do you have local communities which are opposed to the fence. Here you have local communities who have access to weapons, who are fighting us in this insurgency battle, and also being divided. And one of the main issues of this Naga insurgency, at least like I explained the issue of what Khango told me, was the fact that he said that I will continue this fight. The Konyaks, incidentally, are 35% of the population of Nagaland. He said, I will continue this fight till my community is divided. So we have to look at more innovative solutions. One of the innovative solutions that I had come out with, and I had told the then Home Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, was the issue of creating a virtual fence. The ability to supervise the movement of the free move regime, the villages along, using technology, using cards, using sensors, and have some kind of ability to police the movement along these places, and also the ability of making Myanmar create more forces on the other side, because it has to you have to have enough forces on both sides to control the movement of people, especially the illegal movement of people, illegal movement of narcotics and other issues. A fence is not going to do that. You've already seen the example of the fence along the Israel and Gaza. They had spent more than $2 billion, and it's not such a complicated area because I myself have gone there. But that fence was breached if supervision wasn't there. So fences, while might make good neighbors, but fences then in themselves are not the answer. The answer lies in convincing the communities and in improving our ability to supervise this.
Right. What you say basically, boils down to that when it was successful, let's say to a large extent, along some of our other borders. But what you're possibly trying to put across is that local conditions have to be taken into the ambit before we really arrive at a decision. So my next question is, has there been a consultation process between the state governments of these 4 states and the center before we have thought about now freezing that free movement system?
Mr. Chatterjee, if you remember, about the new government of Mizoram has recently been sworn in, and the Chief Minister of Mizoram very clearly stated that we are against the building of the fence. Yeah. So also the Deputy Chief Minister of Nagaland very clearly stated that we don't support the fence. Various communities along the Indo-Myanmar border have voiced their concerns about this fence. And having known these communities, what I fear is that it should not push us back to another cycle of insurgency. So these are complicated issues, Mr. Chatterjee. It's not black and white. You have to convince communities to be a part of us. You have to convince communities to self-police. You have to convince the communities that are divided that it is in their peace is in their favor. And this kind of convincing, if even the political leaders have come out in the open and said they're against it, that it might be very difficult for us to change public opinion. But in the end, unless you get everyone on your side, any kind of fence along the Indo-Myanmar border will not be successful.
Right. My next issue, General, is the Chinese have links with the Myanmarese insurgent groups. And the Myanmarese insurgent groups feed arms and ammunition into us, supplied by China through a particular route or more than one route, whatever be it. Now, How much does that influence a decision of having a fence, and how far is it justified?
Brigadier Chatterjee, I would say that is one of the major reasons of creating this fence. The idea that China can take advantage and is taking advantage. That China has a hand in creating a problem in our northeast. That China can use the northeast to create continued disturbances so as to ensure that a large part of our army and our paramilitary forces are continue to be deployed in the northeast to fight this insurgency or to start guarding the border. It is a major issue, there's no doubt about it. But like I said, Brigadier Chatsky, that the communities along this border are also our first line of defense. The Nagas, the Meiteis, the Kukis, all helped the British in fighting the Japanese when the Japanese came in through this route in World War II. It was these communities, as a part of the V Force, that actually helped the British Indian Army to fight the Japanese and to stop them at Kohima. So these communities have to be a part of us and not against us. And by creating a fence or by not taking their issues in mind, you're not making them allies, you're making them enemies. It's important for the decision makers in our country to know that communities must be engaged, as you said, and we must get them to our side. And even if that takes time, it's okay. But whatever we create should be acceptable by the people from within our country.
Right, then my last question. And that's, well, we see the pros and cons and we see the factors. A very difficult thing to do on ground, really have this fence and have it of any worthwhile use. So what's the way forward, really?
The way forward is firstly engage these communities, explain to them the need for peace, get more and more insurgent groups to close their insurgency and join us in creating the next generation and creating wealth for the next generation and in these areas. I used to talk to these insurgents when I was the chairman of the ceasefire monitoring group, and I found that talking to the armed cadre gave me a view that they were willing to join mainstream if we had enough jobs for them. If we could some way make them or give them suitable employment, then maybe this insurgency would go away. The end point is that Northeast has no industry, no education institutes, no movement. So where do this youth go? And then on top of that, if we create an ugly perception about ourselves that the mainland of India does not bother about you, we will create more enemies than friends. But the end point is, having been a soldier, and my own father fought in the counterinsurgency in Nagaland in 1963, 64, 65. All I can say is that I spent a lifetime there. Today is the best time in which the communities realize that there's a huge difference in being a part of India than being a part of Burma or being a part of Bangladesh or being a part of Pakistan. They would rather be a part of us. This is the right time for us to engage them and convince them of the India's economic miracle and growth, and accept the fact that to close these disturbances and to give their children and their children's children peace and the benefits of peace, we must first engage them and keep them with us. Secondly, technology today exists to create technological barriers that are supervised, policed by the local people themselves. If we can do that, we would have created situations to actually have peace along the Indo-Myanmar border. We, as the country which is doing much better than Burma or Myanmar, must reach out to Burma to help them solve their problems. Because an unstable Burma is definitely not in the best interests of our country.
Right, General. Thank you so much. Thank you. I would say very lucid and very rational articulation of arguments that you put across. And I'm sure it will reach the right people also, the kind of approach that you're talking about. And perhaps that is the answer that you first talk to them, first interact with them, the groups over there, get them on your side, and then only think of this when only then will it be a success story. Thank you so much, General.
Thank you, Brigadier Chatterjee. Thank you.
Right. Viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. Do tune in like this now and then, and you will find such interesting stories. Thank you.